Hi everybody, this is Marlene Pellicer with EERIE News, and today is April 5th, 2022, Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. So let's get right down to it. There's always some unusual things going on, and let's see. Trying to think. Let's go to something weird. It's from Life Science, titled "Bloated Alien Creature That Washed Ashore in Australia, Possibly Identified." The weirdly waterlogged corpse looks more beast of myth than anything real. Let's see. A weirdly bloated creature whose head has been defleshed and body looks more like a swollen, discolored beast of myth than anything real washed up on an Australian beach last week. And though it's anybody's guess the identity of the stranded corpse, experts contacted by Life Science have some ideas. Alex Tan of Queensland, Australia, was taking a stroll on Maroochydore Beach when he made the startling discovery. Speaking into his phone camera at the time, which was April the 1st, he said on Instagram, "I've stumbled across something weird. This is like one of those things you see where people claim they found aliens." The camera then quickly pans away from Tan's face to reveal the bald, bloated creature with claws, a long tail, and an exposed skull. In the video's comments, users speculate that the creature should be anything from a possum, which is what Tan believes, to a dehydrated kangaroo, and of course, an alien. Wilder guesses on social media include mini chupacabra or an extinct marsupial. Despite having mentioned aliens in the original video posted to his Instagram, Tan doesn't seem to believe the creature has an extraterrestrial origin. The people need answers. I'm still guessing it's a possum. My bet of a chicken parmi for any expert that can prove me wrong still stands, he wrote after posting the video. Tan, in a later interview with social media news outlet Storyful, said that the animal had human-like hands, a long lizard tail, a nose like a possum, and patches of black fur. So far, there has been no consensus as to what the creature might be. Russell Bicknell, a marine biologist at the University of New England in Australia, told Life Science that he thinks it's either a kangaroo or a wallaby. Whatever it is, he said, is very waterlogged, likely having been washed out to sea during recent flooding in the area. "I'd say it's a brush-tailed possum that has lost all its fur," Sandy Inglesby, a mammalogy collection manager at the Australian Museum, told Life Science in an email. Inglesby suggests that the skull certainly matches that of a brushtail, as well as the proportions of the limbs and tail to the body. However, this is neither the first nor the last time an unidentifiable or bizarre-looking creature will be found washed up on shore. In 2013, a 30-foot-long giant squid washed up on a Spanish beach, while in 2020, an even larger one appeared in South Africa. Marine biologists identified the creature as Architeuthis dux, the largest marine invertebrate on the planet. In May 2021, an inky black fish with gnarly teeth and an appendage protruding from its head appeared on a beach in California. The animal was later identified. Hold on. Okay. Have to. Right. Okay, let's go back to. In May 2021, an inky black fish with gnarly teeth and an appendage protruding from its head appeared on a beach in California. The animal was later identified as a Pacific football fish. And in 2015, a 15-foot long decomposing sea monster washed ashore in Maine that was identified as a basking shark. In all cases, the unidentified monster is always identified. It remains to be seen what Tan's discovery is, but all evidence points to not alien despite how bizarre looking the creature might be. Let's see. I don't know why they haven't posted a picture of it. Let's see if we can find bloated Australian animal on shore. Okay, let's see if we can find some. Okay. I don't know if this is what this is. I don't think that's it. This doesn't look like a... Or maybe it is. Let's see. No, it's not. That's an old one. Wow. Let's see. Let me tell you something. I can see there's a lot of weird stuff that appears on... I wonder if this is it. I think this is it. For those of you watching, yeah, this is it. This is what the guy saw. This is what he found. For those of you watching the video, it's very unusual. Okay, yeah, you can see where, yeah, it does look like it belongs on land and somehow or other ended up in the water and then got brought in by the tide. It's like everybody wants in on the ET thing. All right, let's go on to... that's really unusual. Let's see what else we can find on here. This, I believe, is really interesting. This is also from Life Science, and it's a new part of the body found hiding in the lungs. All right, that's a first. All right. The newfound cells help to maintain a healthy respiratory system. Scientists have discovered a brand new type of cell hiding inside the delicate branching passageways of human lungs. The newfound cells play a vital role in keeping the respiratory system functioning properly and could even inspire new treatments to reverse the effects of certain smoking-related diseases, according to a new study. The cells, known as respiratory airway secretory, or RAS cells, are found in tiny branching passages known as bronchioles, which are tipped with alveoli, the teensy air sacs that exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide with the bloodstream. The new RAS cells are similar to stem cells, black canvas cells that can differentiate into other type of cell in the body and are capable of repairing damaged alveoli cells and transforming into new ones. Researchers discovered the RAS cells after becoming increasingly frustrated by the limitations of relying on the lungs of mice as models for the human respiratory system. However, because of certain differences between the two, scientists have struggled to fill some knowledge gaps about human lungs. To get a better understanding of these differences on a cellular level, the team took lung tissue samples from healthy human donors and analyzed the genes within individual cells, which revealed the previously unknown RAS cells. It has been known for some time that the airways of the human lung are different than in the mouse. Senior author Edward Morse, a professor at the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania, who specializes in respiratory systems, told Life Science. But emerging technologies have only recently allowed us to sample and identify unique cell types. The team also found RAS cells in ferrets, whose respiratory systems are more similar to humans than those of mice are. As a result, the researchers suspect that most mammals equal or larger in size are likely to have RAS cells in their lungs, Morrissey said. RAS cells serve two main functions in the lungs. First, they secrete molecules that maintain the fluid lining along bronchioles, helping to prevent the tiny airways from collapsing and maximizing the efficiency of the lungs. Second, they can act as progenitor cells for alveolar type 2, AT2 cells, a special type of alveoli or alveoli that secrete a chemical that is used in part to repair other damaged alveoli. A progenitor cell is a cell that has a capacity to differentiate into another type of cell, similar to how stem cells differentiate into other cells. RAS cells are what we've termed facultative progenitors, Morrissey said, which means they act as both progenitor cells and also have important functional roles in maintaining airway health. This means RAS cells play a vital role in maintaining healthy lungs, he added. The researchers think RAS cells may play a major role in smoke-related diseases, such as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. COPD is the result of inflammation of airway passages inside the lungs, which can be caused by smoking and occasionally air pollution, according to the Mayo Clinic. The inflammation of the airways makes it harder for the lungs to properly take in enough oxygen. As a result, COPD has similar symptoms to asthma. COPD can also lead to emphysema, in which alveoli are permanently destroyed, and chronic bronchitis, a long-lasting and intense cough, usually accompanied by excess phlegm. Each year, more than 3 million people around the world die from COPD, according to the World Health Organization. In theory, RAS cells should prevent, or at least alleviate, the effects of COPD by repairing damaged alveoli. However, the researchers suspect that smoking can damage, or even completely destroy, the new cells, leading to the onset of diseases such as COPD. Patients who have COPD are often prescribed anti-inflammatory drugs or oxygen therapy to ease their symptoms. However, these are only temporary solutions and do nothing to reverse lung damage. RAS cells could potentially be used to improve treatments or even cure COPD if researchers can properly harness these cells' regenerative properties. We really don't know if this discovery could lead to potential cure for COPD yet, Morrissey said. However, since COPD is a disease we know very little about, any new light should help the field start to think about new therapeutic approaches that could lead to better treatments. Now, what's interesting about this is that, does the smoking or whatever it is that cause it kill off these new cells, these RAS? And if they do harness, I wonder if there's a way to make your body regenerate them? Or are they talking about introducing it from somebody else? That would be interesting. Very interesting. Well, all right. Let's get on to some weird stuff. Okay, this is, let's take a walk on the dark side. This is a house with a history of murder. And it's an antebellum house. It was built in 1918. It's derelict and crumbling now. It's built in the neoclassical revival style with its fluted Ionic columns. It's not difficult to imagine how splendid it once looked. Even now it seems the perfect setting for Southern Gothic mystery. Originally known as the Hardy Coleman House, its death that made it notorious as the Alan Lucy Murder House. In September of 1985, local newspapers ran stories of a missing 14-year-old named Alan Lucy, who disappeared since May 21, after he left for school. His mother described the intervening months as agony. According to Philip Lucy, the father, a Uniontown boy, said he saw a tall, quote, a tall, heavy-set white man with a short black beard and mustache, end quote, take Alan by the neck and lead him away. Alan was in front of the Piggly Wiggly. The youth said the man marched Alan right by him, but Alan walked by like he didn't even know him. The police refused to consider it anything but a case of a runaway teenager. The Lucys distributed flyers throughout town with Alan's picture and gave his information to the Missing Children's Bureau that served their area. Alan was one of 7 children. The older children lived out of state, so besides Alan there was a 13-year-old and an 8-year-old at home. To all appearances, the Lucys appeared to be devastated parents who believed their son had not run away, but had been kidnapped by a stranger. They even offered a reward for any information about him. It seems they felt sure no one would claim it, since Alan was neither a runaway or had been kidnapped. Instead, he was dead and had been buried under the front porch of the house. In 1994, skeletal remains were found in a crawl space under a front porch column. It was buried under less than a foot of dirt and had been wrapped in a Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck bed sheets and covered with 2 plastic bags. The Lucys had sold the house 3 months before, and the new owners were digging in the crawl space when they came upon it. According to District Attorney Roy Johnson, the skull was split under an eye socket, but we're not sure what may have caused that. The police found the parents, who had moved to Lamison, Alabama, but Philip and Dale Lucy refused to come to the police station and answer any questions. The couple had taken Alan in as a foster child when they lived in Florida, and he was 8 years old. When he was 11, they adopted him. Then the Lucys were arrested and charged with arson in an unrelated investigation into a fire at that very same house in 1989 that tried to collect on part of a $119,000 insurance policy taken out only a month before. Further investigation found that filed claims on 2 other houses that were damaged by fire. First in 1965 for a St. Louis house, then in 1976 for a home in Baskin, Louisiana. A report issued by the state fire marshal said the Lucy family was seen standing outside their Uniontown house after the fire started, fully dressed and making no attempt to put it out. Mr. Bauman, who was one of the new owners, recalled that he once sat on the front porch with Philip Lucy, that he enjoyed rocking at one corner of the porch, just above where Alan's remains would be found eventually. Bauman said, he kept saying that he felt the presence of ghosts where he liked to rock away. Authorities then brought a corpse-sniffing dog who indicated that a body was, or had been, in the backyard of the house. An earth-moving vehicle was brought to the home, but no more bodies were discovered. Uniontown Police Chief Robert Hester said there were reports the house may have been constructed over a cemetery. 2 days after examination of the remains confirmed they belonged to Alan Lucy by a comparison of dental records. In the midst of the investigation, a self-proclaimed psychic from Marion showed up at the murder scene and said that he had a vision of a little girl's body buried in the backyard. Kelly Kirby, the new owner, said the psychic told him he dreamed that a 5-year-old girl was buried near an evergreen tree. She had long dark hair and had been buried 12 feet from the tree. Kirby paced off the 12 feet and dug down about a foot and found only some bricks. There were no missing reports for a 5-year-old girl. The police then went after Phyllis Tink Lucy Bowler. This is one of the Mr. and Mrs. Lucy's daughter. She was a teacher at Auburn University who was Alan's stepsister to answer questions about the boy's disappearance. She said she had no knowledge about his disappearance. She had married and left the home a year after Alan Lucy vanished. The new owners of the home turned around and sued the Lucys for $1.9 million for not telling them about the body. He said, nobody will want to rent a room from me at this location. Fast forward a year, and Philip Lucy was charged with killing Alan Lucy, and Mrs. Lucy was out on bond for the charge of arson. Jason, the Lucy's natural son, testified that he saw his father strike Alan in the kitchen of the house. Alan had fallen to the floor and didn't move. His eyes were half open. Then a few hours later, he saw his father carrying a shovel and some dirty clothes in the backyard. Investigators believe Philip Lucy buried the body first in the yard and then unearthed it a year later and moved it under the porch. Authorities found that Alan Lucy died as a result of blunt force trauma to the neck, and that Philip Lucy inflicted the blows with his fist. Since Philip Lucy was a former boxer, it was not hard to believe he could kill a teenager with one blow. Or perhaps, in a darker version, he buried Alan while he was still alive. Eventually, Philip was found competent to stand trial for the beating death of his adopted son. However, within a few weeks it was reversed when he was found mentally incompetent to stand trial. He was once more ordered to go in for psychiatric examination. Dale Lucy, his wife, then testified that her husband vowed to kill her if she spoke out against him. She said that he physically abused her in the past, once breaking one of her fingers after she pointed it at him. Dale and her son Jason were charged the year before with mistreating an incapacitated adult, Donald Lucy, an adopted son who was mentally retarded. By March 1994, the Lucys had been indicted for arson, and Philip Lucy was sent to be mentally evaluated after it was found he hid the fact that he had serious mental problems. Philip Lucy, 61, and his wife, Margaret Dale Lucy, 47, both pled innocent to the arson charges. It seemed that Mr. Lucy had been receiving disability benefits since 1977 for a back injury, but in 1979, his benefits were being paid to him because he was afflicted with paranoid-type schizophrenia. Philip had a history of violence, having been dishonorably discharged from the army for beating a soldier during the Korean War. It was not until 1997 that Philip Lucy was found competent to stand trial. In 1998, while he was awaiting to stand trial, Philip said the skeletal remains were taken from a cemetery as a Halloween prank. This was despite the fact that forensic examiners had matched the teeth from the remains to dental records for Alan, and later, DNA taken from his biological mother confirmed the same. The trial was delayed in 1998 because the district attorney was having a problem locating Jason Lucy for testimony at the trial. And in fact, he disappeared since 1994. A transcript taken during the preliminary hearing was used. In 1999, Philip Lucy was released on $10,000 bond from the Perry County Jail, where he had been kept for the last 5 years. However, the citizens in the neighborhood signed a petition to present to the Perry County District Attorney that they wanted him removed from the area because they feared for the safety of their children. Lucy was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. However, in 2000, he was given another trial because of problems with the jury pick. In 2001, during the second trial, Roy Johnson, the district attorney who prosecuted Lucy initially, had died. So had Lucy's wife, who divorced him following his arrest. Luckily, Jason Lucy, who had not been available to testify against his father, was found in Missouri and held on a probation violation. On November 29th, Philip Lucy was found hanging in his Perry County jail cell, 12 hours after a jury found him guilty of beating his adopted son to death. He fashioned the news from bed sheets. Lucy had already suffered 2 strokes previous to the trial. Ardella Leisure, who was Alan's biological mother, confronted Lucy after his conviction and told him from the witness stand, "I hope you die in prison." She and her second husband, Robert Leisure, attended both trials. They had been married for 23 years. Born William Allen Marvel to Willard D. Marvel and Ardella May Narragon in Lee County, Florida, his mother said the state took her son because of a dispute she was having with her ex-husband, and she never saw him again. She said the state of Florida took him into custody and placed him for adoption. Supposedly, they said they ran into problems from a lawyer who cared more about money than the child, and a judge with a reputation for making controversial decisions about child custody. The attorney said it would take more money to fight the judge. She didn't know of Allen's disappearance until Philip Lucy was scheduled for trial in her son's death. Until 2001, Allen had remained unburied. Funds were raised and he was laid to rest on January 30th, 2002 at the Rosemont Cemetery in Uniontown, Alabama. I thought that was an interesting case. And the reason why I thought it was interesting is that sometimes we see, I've come across a lot of these cases where children are stolen by strangers, and sometimes, as a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago I did the one for Little Miss X that they found her body like a week after, but they never knew it was her till 50, 62 years later. And of course she was taken in front of witnesses by a stranger. But it goes to show you that sometimes these parents were walking around like they had their child stolen by a kidnapper. All right? They put out flyers. They contacted the Missing Children's Bureau. They even were willing to give out a reward because, of course, they knew nobody was going to cash in on it because he was first buried in the backyard and then under a column. And by the way, the house now, it's I believe it belongs, weirdly, I think, to the state of Alaska or somebody there, some company out of Alaska. It's abandoned. Because what happened was the Lucys had set fire to it, that they were trying to make a claim against it. It wasn't totally destroyed, and the new owners bought it even though it did have some of the fire damage, and they, I believe, were going to reconstruct it and repurpose it for some other type of rental, as a rental property of some type. I can't remember. But let's face it, once something like that, some people now may see it, wow, I could run ghost hunts out of there. Back in the 1980s, 1990s, something like this was a real big stigma against a property. So there you go. Now, this is out of Mysterious Universe. It's called The Terrifying Case of the Dagg Demon. And some hauntings are really hard to categorize and can really take a turn into the truly bizarre. In 1889, farmer George Henry Dagg and his family, wife Susan, his own children, Mary 4, John 2, as well as an adopted daughter, 11-year-old Dinah McLean, were leading a simple, quiet life on their placid rural property in Clarendon, near the small town of Shawville, Quebec, in Canada. They were a perfectly normal farming family, living peacefully and going about their normal lives, and there was nothing particularly remarkable about them. But this would change in September of that year, when a sequence of bizarre paranormal events began to unfold at their secluded property that would steadily gain momentum and intensity until it would become one of the most shocking and frightening hauntings in Canadian history. It all started innocuously enough. One day, George gave his wife some money in 2 bills, which he put into the drawer in their room. But the next day, one of the bills was found on the floor of the kitchen. When George checked the drawer, both bills were missing, and Susan claimed that she had not touched them. In the coming days, other objects turned up in strange places or went missing altogether, and at first George assumed that a young farmhand named Dean had stolen the money and was pulling pranks, but the boy adamantly denied having anything to do with it. The missing and misplaced items continued, with his own children also insisting they had had nothing to do with it. Things began to appear from outside as well, such as rocks and sticks, and one day Susan went about the home doing chores and came into the living room to find a pile of pig's feces smeared all over the floor. George at this point had had enough, and still convinced that it was Dean playing some sort of practical joke, sent the boy on his way. However, the strange missing and misplaced items would continue. At this point, it was more annoying than anything truly spooky, but this would soon change. Things began to increase in intensity when the family began hearing odd thumping and banging on the walls at all hours of the night. They would go out and look around to find no explanation for it. No wild animals, no trespassers. Yet as soon as they went back to their room to try and get some sleep, the cacophony would start right back up again. After this, objects were seen to move on their own, including a rocking chair kept in one of the rooms that would start to creak back and forth on its own. And this would graduate to items and furniture being thrown about with great force by unseen hands. On several occasions, windows were broken by rocks hurling through them. But no matter what George did, he could find no one responsible, even having a window break as he was hiding, waiting to catch the perpetrator. In addition to all of this, dishes would be found smashed, milk jugs with their contents splashed all over the place found crushed, furniture defaced, and there was an organ in the house that would start playing on its own. Even more frightening still were fires that began to spontaneously erupt around the house. Although they were always able to put these out, the fires were extremely persistent, with 8 once occurring in a single day. This got more menacing still when the thrown objects that had been tormenting them started targeting them directly, with rocks smacking into them and water jugs splashed onto them. There were also occasions when an unseen force would pull hair or push people. Then there were the sinister voices. Family members began to be harassed by a gruff voice like that of an old man coming from the shadows that would berate them and make strange, threatening statements. On one occasion, it growled to one of the children, "Would you like to go to hell with me?" And another it spat out, "I am the devil, and I'll have you in my clutches." The voice would follow them around, taunting them and mocking their attempts to find an explanation for the phenomena, laughing at them when they made mistakes, breaking their concentration at the most inopportune times, and generally making a nuisance of itself. The voice also answered questions directed at it, but its answers often made little sense. When asked what it was, it would give different answers at different times, including that it was the spirit of a man who had died in the house, that he was a devil or a force conjured by black magic, and later on even claiming that he was an angel. The voice also had the strange habit of changing in tone and timbre, alternating between an almost childish, impish voice to another time when it was little more than an animalistic snarl. This mysterious voice became very persistent, and there were numerous neighbors and visitors to the house who heard it for themselves. As if this weren't enough, there also began to appear spooky apparitions. It began when Dinah woke her parents screaming that there was a big black thing pulling off the bedclothes. When her parents arrived, they could not see it, but they did see the bedsheets levitating in the air, and Dinah insisted the entity was there, jumping over the bedstead. Dinah was then given a bullwhip and told to strike it, which elicited a squeal like a pig as the entity vanished. On another occasion, the children were playing in the yard when they claimed to have seen a tall man with a cow's head, cloven feet, and horns, with this entity appearing in the house as well. And there was also a large black dog with glowing red eyes was also seen lurking about. These ominous apparitions were only ever seen by the children, but their parents at this point had no doubts that they were telling the truth. By now, they were coming to the conclusion that the entity, whatever it was, seemed to gravitate towards Dinah. It seemed that the paranormal activity only ever seemed to happen when she was around, that she was the main target of many of the ghostly attacks. The terrified family decided to call a clergyman called Reverend Horner to come and try to bless the house and exorcise whatever it was, but this backfired. Not only did the voice laugh and mock the exorcist's efforts, but the prayer book from which he was reading vanished from his hand to appear in the oven. Another clergyman, a Baptist minister named Reverend Bell, also took a crack at it, was immediately verbally accosted by the entity, which mocked his faith and wondered out loud who had given him the authority to call it an evil spirit. A few violently thrown objects later, and Belle fled in terror. The voice then changed into a more benevolent tone and claimed that it was an angel, before launching into a beautifully sung hymn in front of many witnesses. After this, the residence was visited by a local reporter, psychic researcher by the name of Percy Woodcock, who talked to the family, interviewed Dinah, and came to the conclusion that she was channeling a spirit that she claimed lived in an old shed on the property. With her help, Woodstock would make contact with it at the shed and ended up having a long conversation and debate with the entity. Things did not start off on the right foot when the voice immediately snarled at Woodcock, "Get out of here, or I'll break your neck," before launching into a torrent of curses and obscenities, and even picking up a pencil to scrawl profanity onto a sheet of paper. Woodcock patiently waited for the verbal assault to finish, after which he admonished it for saying such things in front of children. From there, for the next 5 hours, Woodcock verbally sparred with the entity, asking what it wanted and telling it to leave the family alone, all while it attacked Dinah and spewed venomous words. Greg Graham, a local playwright and amateur historian, has said of the harrowing ordeal, "With witnesses gathered, Woodcock argued for the soul of Dinah, or asking this ghost, or whatever it was, to leave her alone. They began debating about philosophy, theology, the nature of God, and the right and wrong. And when he made the ghost mad, Dinah would react as if she was slapped, kicked, hit, punched, or scratched. Got very violent against Dinah, and he'd have it back off." During this grueling conversation, the sinister entity made many claims. It said that it had not meant to hurt the family and had been doing everything merely for its own amusement. It also once again alternately claimed to be the devil, an angel in the spirit of an 80-year-old man who had died on the property 20 years prior. Amazingly, after much negotiation, the voice eventually was worn down and agreed to leave the family in peace the following day. The next morning, the Dagg children would then claim to see a tall, old man in flowing white gowns walking nearby. Before he bid them farewell, raised his arms and disappeared in a burst of streaking flame. The whole 3-month-long ordeal had been well witnessed, with 17 respected members of the community, including politicians, police, and clergymen, signing an affidavit that it was all true. It would seem that this would be the end of the disturbances for the Dagg family. But rather curiously, there have been reports of something strange going on at the property in more recent times. In 2014, Chris Lackner, with the Ottawa Citizen, investigated the scene and met with Charlene LaBombarde, the current owner of the Dagg house, whose family have had some odd experiences there. Lackner writes about his conversation with Charlene. She recalled hearing, as a teenager, someone climb the creaky old stairs and stop outside her door. Thinking it was a sibling prank, she flung the door open, only to find herself alone and terrified. Her siblings claim an upstairs door also had a habit of opening and closing of its own volition. "I don't have a superstitious mind," Charlene explained. Some of her children claim to have seen what appears to be a little girl in a white gown or dress come down the stairs in the original part of the old farmhouse and cross down the hall through the kitchen door. Charlene's late husband swore he saw the apparition once too. Pointedly, some Dagg family stories indicate that a young daughter, Eliza Jane, died at the farm under mysterious circumstances, scalded by a pot of boiling water. Though most lore places that event after the famous haunting, the tragedy has been linked in spirit. The only other oddity noted by the Lombards, a strange sound of crawling and scratching in the attic, solely focused above the original house, and not the extension. If the world's chattiest ghost is still hanging around, he's taken a vow of silence. Are the odd happenings reported by the current residents some strange remnant of the Dagg haunting? What really happened 125 years ago? What happened there indeed? Over 100 years later, The Dagg haunting is still discussed and talked about, very much a part of the local lore that has never really gone away. Those who believe something paranormal was going on have had various theories as to what it could have been. Everything from poltergeists or ghosts to demons to the devil himself has been thrown about. But there is no clear answer, and it is hard to really clearly categorize it. It was weird. Whatever it was, local historian Venetia Crawford has said of the entity. He wanted to upset everybody there, and he did a good job of it. So whatever he could think of that was unusual that day, he did. He had a very unique personality. He was such a strange ghost. I don't think he was either good or bad. I think he was whatever he wanted to be in the moment. What was going on with his family? Was this just some hoax, misidentification, or misunderstanding? Or was it something else? How can we explain so many witnesses having experienced the phenomena for themselves? If this was a mysterious supernatural force, then what was it, and what did it want? Why did it act so bizarrely, and why did it orbit the adopted daughter Dinah? Why did it tell so many forms? Why was it so vocal, and where did it go? We will never have the answers to any of these questions, and it remains one of the weirdest Canadian hauntings there is. And, as a matter of fact, to me, it reminds me a lot of the Bell Witch haunting, and it seems to have some type of poltergeist-like activity surrounding it. You have a prepubescent girl. She was adopted. Who knows if she came from some type of troubled background? You know what? What I would really like to know is what happened with Dinah after that stopped. What happened to her as an adult? Because maybe this was just a poltergeist. Was it using her as a battery? Who knows? But anyway, I hope you enjoyed another day of very weird news. Take care. See you soon.